Yeah, I mean, this is not new. The latest manifestation is dramatic. But actually what's been happening, and I quote the former Italian European Commissioner, Tajani, who talked about an industrial massacre happening in Europe. But you know what? In the last decade, 24 chemical plants have closed. Both of our aluminium smelters are closed. Most of our steel production has closed. And much of our heavy engineering has closed. And what people don't understand is for heavy manufacturing, one of the biggest costs, and sometimes even bigger than a salary bill, is energy. Okay, now, I know there are great concerns about CO2, climate change, and all the rest of it. However, what's been happening with an EU-led policy is we are giving ourselves energy costs that are very expensive at exactly the same time as America went for shale gas and India and China have gone for coal on a scale we can't even imagine. So the biggest factor in all of this is the sheer cost of energy. Add to that the dramatic fall in the world price of steel. Now, for 20 years before being in politics, I was a metals trader. All right, so I know a little bit about this subject. China had this amazing expansion, with growth rates running at 9-10% per annum for many, many years. And they've built a vast steel sector. That steel sector they built is way too big for their own domestic consumption, and now dwarfs actually global steel production. And state-subsidized steel manufactured in China is now being sold in the UK, sold across Europe, and is directly putting our businesses out of business, making them completely unviable for the future. Now, I traditionally have believed in free trade. I think that if we manufacture a shirt and somebody in Singapore can make it cheaper, then what we have to do is to manufacture a high quality shirt. That's how trade operates. However, that works when we're dealing with capitalism. What we're now dealing with is giant corporatism and politics. And I have reached the view, despite being somebody who's argued in favour of free trade, I've reached the view that what China is doing to the European steel industry is willful, is destructive, and will close down an industry that isn't just about jobs and the economy. Actually, it's a key strategic industry. And I want the United Kingdom to do what the Americans have done, to act, to put a tariff on that says it's not worth your while setting steel in this country. The problem is, the problem that we've got, and indeed the problem that you and Italy have got, is that none of us as countries are any longer in control of trade policy or tariff policy. That is all decided here by, believe it or not, the unelected European Commission. And they try to marry up the interests of 28 different countries, and it takes them months to do anything. And by the time they've reached a proper decision, the remaining steelworks in the United Kingdom will have closed. We fight against it by following the example of America, but the question is, can we do that as a European Union, or would we be better to act in our own national interests and do it quickly? And I think the latter proposal is the more pragmatic and sensible one. And it's one of the reasons why I'm campaigning for Brexit. I want to trade with Europe. I want to cooperate with Europe, be friends with Europe, but I think the British government should be in control of our insurance industry, our fishing industry, and our steel industry. I think that's a real worry. I think there is, and can I be fair and say that the British government are amongst the worst offenders in all of this. Our Chancellor, George Osborne, appears to be in love with China and big Chinese money for nuclear power stations and for giant infrastructure projects, and has been really not very helpful here in terms of tariffs, and is arguing for market economy status. The European Commission want the same thing. And my understanding of this is that the Commission, the European Union, will have to have established a position by the end of this year. So we could be granting market economy status to China early next year on the current timeline. And if we do that, it becomes even harder to stop unfair competition. So I'm opposed to it. Oh, it's possible. It doesn't mean it's certain, but it's possible. I mean, there may well be a quid pro quo deal that has gone on here. What I do know is that the proposal for the new nuclear power station at Hinkley Point, that the strike price that's been agreed and guaranteed over the next 35 years is way in excess of what most analysts think the price of energy will be over the next 35 years. And I don't have the same principled objections to nuclear power per se that some do, but I have a total objection to nuclear power that gives us very expensive energy and transfers UK taxpayers' money to effectively the Chinese government. The Hinkley Point deal is completely mad, and it's beyond me why we've signed up to it. Well, look, of course I support public consultation as a principle, but let's be realistic. Nobody in the European Commission gives a damn about what the public think, about how we vote, or what we do. And this gets to the heart of a bigger, deeper debate. What kind of Europe is it that we're living in? If it was a Europe of democratic countries agreeing to do things together, it might be tenable. It might work for the future. Actually, we have a Europe where the executive, where the people who have the sole right to propose legislation cannot be voted for and cannot be removed. And that's why, for the sake of the steel industry and many other things, I'm voting for Brexit. And not just for Britain, I would like the rest of Europe to follow us too. I would love to think that in 10 years' time, you come back and interview me, and we have a Europe that is based on being good neighbours living in the same street, but not a Europe based on, an executive that we can't vote for and we can't remove. Surely we believe in democracy. I do.